So if you are a bit of a comic book nerd like me, you will love this conversation with Jason Starr. Jason is an incredible author, like written all kinds of things along the way. He was so awesome to talk to. And what I loved about him really was this idea of embracing the craft of being an author and a writer. And I think a couple things that he shared that I loved that I think you'll enjoy in our sort of snippet conversation today is, number one, you got to be okay with the fact that you're going to have micro rejections. Even Stephen King sometimes gets told no. And so it's just part of the process. Develop that thick skin and be writing for yourself. Number two, remember that writing isn't one of those things that it's about being the most talented person in the world. Like, yeah, you want to have talent, but talent plus commitment is what yields to results. So you have your talent, whatever it is. And remember, the more you're committed to the process, you'll produce something great with that time over time. The third thing is really this idea of, remember that writing is this sort of daily commitment. Dan Pink once said, it's a blue collar job. You show up and you put in the work every day. And that's what gets more and more good writing days for you. So make sure you think about those pieces. And then lastly, the most important thing to know is write what you know. And that's really what I think Jason finds in the way that he's able to create so prolifically is before he sits down for his writing sessions, he spends time gathering, learning, or capturing so that then he can let the words flow. So don't sort of write what you imagine or what you don't know yet. Sit down, write what you know or what you've learned and put it on the paper. If you enjoy these modern author conversations like this with Jason Starr and amazing guy, make sure you subscribe. That's a great way for you to get these and get notified when we put up new episodes with amazing authors and creators like Jason. Have fun, enjoy the conversation. Remember, never write alone.
Keep doing it. I mean, you have to keep writing, and definitely don't get discouraged if you're in a creative writing class, you have a group of friends, you show something to your editors, or you're submitting a book, unless everyone's saying, like, I don't like the end problem with the character. Then it makes me think, okay, there's something wrong with the character, because I'm hearing it from multiple people. And it's not, I wouldn't even listen so much to the specific note, because that could get too much in your head. But then approach it yourself. It's like, okay, I'm hearing from a lot of people that something's wrong with the ending of this book. When I was growing up, I read a lot of Spider-Man, but maybe as an adult, Wolverine or the Punisher would be my favorite. Characters that have like a code and they're gray and not necessarily good or evil. Or usually
that grit to them a little bit, right?
Yeah, have a little gray in them. The first time I had something published by Marvel or DC was a little surreal.
Yeah.
Or I wrote a couple of comics that involve Batman. And just when you just start writing dialogue for Batman, it's sort of slightly surreal.
You've been writing in this broadly, I think it's described kind of this crime-ish genre a little bit that you've been doing for a while that ties some of these pieces together. How's that for you to sort of see this become so popularized?
Cable and streaming, crime has become almost more mainstream than I think it was. I mean, mystery was certainly mainstream with the CSI shows and Law and Order, et cetera. But I think the dark, edgy crime shows, starting like with Breaking Bad maybe and Dexter time, it just became almost like a selling point to have something dark and edgy and something that's very commercial for cable TV in particular, as opposed to the book world where it's still considered somewhat of a subgenre. It might be people who just don't have the sensibility for books that might disturb them in ways, and they want like the happy ending and a character that they could imagine being friends with, who for me is not necessarily the most interesting character. Sometimes. Sometimes they aren't. Since college, like I wanted to write, and it was a matter of like how I was going to figure out how to make money or make a living doing it. I had a lot of jobs, some in publishing. I was actually, the only job I was ever fired from was St. Martin's Press, which ultimately published a few of my books, but I was fired for reading. Telemarketing in particular really sets you up for rejection. It's a successful day if you make 100 calls and you get a couple of yeses. And that mentality is what you need to make it as a writer. No matter what level you're at, everybody except Stephen King has to experience a lot of micro rejections. What requires a lot of emotion to write something. So it's like something that requires a lot of emotional investment to get it done, but then you have to let go of it. Writing is a gradual loss of control. So as you're writing something, the writer's in complete control, especially if it's a book and it's not collaborative, like a comic, for example. But if you're writing a novel, you're in complete control. If you're not talking to your friends about it, which I'm against doing, I'm a fan of keeping it in your head. You have to have that fantasy of what's going to happen when you finish the book. Writing every day, the fantasy of me seeing my comic book in stores as a kid. I was getting into those habits, and one of the telemarketing jobs I had, I remember there was an incentive that if you got 3 sales, you could leave for the day. So I always had, my hottest prospects, and so that I can go off and write. So sometimes I was there for an hour. If you want to work out and get in shape, you have to put that hour or 2 hours every day to do it. It's not going to happen otherwise. So you have to really make that commitment to it. And talent is an important component. There's something that makes some people continue. And talent is just an assumption. It's an assumption that unless you do have talent, you're not going to really have that drive. You're not going to have those fantasies of success that motivate you and all those.
Is there something that you do that kind of puts you through that grind period?
When I really have a good writing day, I feel like it was fun. I enjoyed being, even if the character is dark and disturbing, I enjoyed writing those lines. There was some enjoyment. If it wasn't fun, it would be really hard. I have a really good writing day and sort of like meditation. You're in that zone,
right?
And it kind of relaxes you. It becomes a routine. Because then you start using that. Maybe it's dysfunctional escapism.
Therapy session,
I'm not saying this is good. And this is why a lot of writers, are screwed up in some ways. But I think that is a way to write a lot of books. Because you're working out stuff, on the page. So a lot of anxiety goes into it, a lot of fun goes into it, and just a lot of emotional energy. And also, obviously, making money is a drive to do.
When you're sort of adapting characters that are well known, sort of some of the comic characters, is there a style that you do before you start to write or as you're writing to develop them?
For the existing characters, it's a matter of researching them, which isn't as hard as it sounds. If you told me today that next week I have to write a proposal for a comic book character, I would do what anybody would do. You go to Wikipedia, you read about the character, you read a few comics from different periods, you get a sense of the voice, the attitude of the character. If you look at the books I've written, real world situations, ordinary people in extraordinary, circumstances. Partly because I think it's just a way to hopefully hook readers in, make them identify with the situation. Maybe you wouldn't make the same decisions that character makes, but you could certainly identify with someone who had is in a bad relationship or something happened at work. I also usually write about something I know really well. In my book Twisted City, for example, the character worked at a financial magazine, and I'd worked at many financial magazines, so I didn't have to research anything to start that. Cold Caller, the first book, was about telemarketing. 2 guys who grew up in Brooklyn, and they both want to be baseball players, professional baseball players. Are you basing books on myself, usually in some sort of judgmental way, of saying, are you as crazy as your characters? I mean, usually the truth is that there's the situation is something that's similar to my life, and then I just let it go in other weird directions. But Yeah, so that's why I think I have characters that are familiar for me. And yeah, like I will research things after. I try to get the details afterwards, or like ballistics thing, like about it, like how a gun, I don't want to start doing gun research while I'm writing it. Some writers completely different. They want to go on a tax deductible research trip before they write the book. Hey, I think I'll set it in Belize. I'll just, go on this trip. I haven't done that, but maybe I should. Maybe I'm missing out. Well, if it's comics, like I did this Wolverine series for Wolverine Max for the 17 and up audience, so it can get very dark and edgy. That's different than when I'm coming up with an original idea. I would also just try to stay true to yourself, and not try to write a trend. By the time you finish the book, it's over. That trend is over. You get into that routine of writing every day, even if you're in school and or you have a full-time job, even if it's just revising every day, working on your outline every day. You really have to keep your head in it every day.
Find what's missing and always understand that motivation and touch into your own self a little bit here, which I love it. Well, and
it's also like it also takes empathy, I think, to write the evil person in the story, just as much as it takes empathy to write the nice person. It might be easy to find that empathy, but to me, empathy is understanding the way a character works. Sometimes your second or third book becomes your first book that you sell. And then they say, do you have anything else? And then you have your first two books. So don't look at it as lost time or anything either, but you just have to keep going, keep producing work. Because to be a writer, you have to keep producing anyways.